In this video, we're going to cover the 2.5D toolpaths of both facing and pocketing. I've already loaded a part into Visual Wheel. I've created some stock for it. I've loaded my tool libraries. So we'll go to the Visual Mill mop set. We're going to go to Create, and we're going to go to the 2.5 axis toolpath. We're going to select Facing, and this brings up our window for tooling. So the first thing we'll do is select curves as regions, and I'm going to select this square box here. I'm going to select a tool of a 1/2 inch end mill just so that we can use that. I've already loaded it. With feeds and speeds, since I already have it in my tool library, I can load from the library itself. And so here's all my tooling speeds set. My clearance plane, I'm going to do stock in this case plus a distance, so that'll be the max stock height plus my distance. Advanced cut parameters, there's nothing I'm going to change here. Entry and exit, I'm going to leave both of those at none, so it simply comes in as a straight motion. Cut levels, this indicates how deep do I want to cut into the stock. So the first thing it's going to ask me is where is the cut geometry? In other words, where is the 2D part file? And that is at the top of the stock. And so you'll have to indicate where you've located that. You may have put it at the bottom when you put your stock in, but most commonly it's going to be on the top. My total depth of cut, since my stock is 1 inch, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch in. And then it's going to ask me, for the rough depth, how deep do you want to go? And then how deep do you want to go for finishing depth? Now, I can do this all at rough depth, but what it allows me to do is this second piece here is how deep per pass do I want to cut while I'm calling it roughing, and how deep per pass do I want to do for finishing. So if I wanted to do this all in one pass, I could use my rough depth as 1/2 inch, and the depth per cut is also 1/2 inch, so it'll only make one pass around. If I select this at 0.25 or 250 thousandths, that means it's going to make 2 passes to make this cut. So we're going to do that. And then in here under global parameters, this tolerance is again how close do we stay to the line. So the higher we set that, the longer our toolpath generation will be, but the more accurate our cut. I'm going to leave no extra stock. I'm going to have my cut direction as mixed. And then here's a new piece, tool step over. So for each pass, as I'm cutting all this area out, how much do I want to step the tool over each time? The more that you step over, the more stress you're putting on the cutter, so that potentially the rougher the cut. But if you don't step over enough, you could end up not cutting enough stock to make enough chip and generate excess heat. I'm going to go ahead and step over 50% of the tool, and then I'm going to go down to the very bottom and click on the Generate tab. So that went through and generated the code. So now I'm going to go back to this and go to simulation mode, and we'll see there it cut 2 paths or 2 different pieces. I slowed my simulation down and do it. There's it cutting the first layer. There's it cutting the second. If I zoom in, especially here in the corner, notice that this line here is my actual drawing. The cutter has gone outside of that, and it's gone outside of that half the dimension of the cutter, which means it has faced this square area here to the depth that we wanted. It facing will always go beyond the material or beyond the drawing edge so that it completely cuts clean the inside area. If it had stopped at the line, it would have left a little curved area or a little fillet at the corner that the radius of the cutter couldn't get to. So facing is always going past the working line. All right, we're going to delete that one. And now we're going to create a pocketing cycle. We're going to go to pocketing. I'm going to use that same region, that same square that we did before, so it's still selected there. I'm going to use the same tool. Feed rates are already in. Remember, we can load from our library. Clearance path is going to stay the same. Sorting is only useful if you have multiple objects on the part. So if I had a series of squares that I wanted to do, this would be how it indicated which square to go to first. Advanced parameters, we're going to leave it on that. Entry and exit, here's an important one. The tool cuts better coming in at an angle rather than plunging or drilling into the stock. So it's good to have an engage motion at an angle. The retraction motion, however, if it comes at an angle, especially if you're down deep into a pocket or a hollow space in the part, if it comes up at an angle, it can still clip the edge of that part. So to be on the safe side, I always set my retract angle at 0. That'll leave it to come straight up instead of coming over at an angle. Cut levels is just like we saw with facing. Geometry's at the top. We're going to do a 1/2 inch depth of cut, and our roughing depth will be 250 thousandths per cut, so it'll again do 2 layers. Cut parameters are going to be the same. We're going to increase this so our cut becomes more accurate, and we're going to leave 0 stock. We're going to have a mixed cut direction, and also notice here we can have different patterns of cuts: offset, linear, spiral. Linear will go just back and forth. Spiral will either start at the beginning or the inside of the part or the outside and go outward. Radial cuts, they just generate different cut paths. You can see here. We're going to leave it with offset cuts. We're going to start inside the material. And again, our step over is going to be the same as we did before. So we generate. And now if we go to simulation mode, you'll see this cut in 2 parts. But now notice the cut is inside of our drawing dimensions, not outside. So it's left that little corner inside of our pocket. That's the difference between pocketing and facing. We're going to delete that one again. And we're going to zoom out so we can see our entire part piece here. Now we're going to do one more pocketing piece, but this time we're going to have 2 regions. We're going to select curves. We're going to select this one and this one. Because they're inside of each other, we're going to get a different effect. We're going to still stay with that 1/2 inch ball mill. We're going to get our feed rates from our tool. Clearance is going to stay the same. Sorting is going to stay the same. Exit and entry, remember to make sure we set that for 0 angle. Cut levels, we're going to keep this at 1/2 inch. And we'll do it again in 2 passes. We're going to set our tolerance back up and set our stock at 0. Again, the same pieces we've seen before. This time I'm going to set tool step over at 25% just to leave it as it is. I'm going to generate, but now when I go to the simulation mode, because these 2 parts were inside of each other, it leaves the smaller piece as an island left. So that's a good way if you have something that is pocketed around but you need an area left inside. That's how that works. And if I had multiple circles like this inside, it would leave those as well. Remember, anytime we're cutting, if we had a space, for instance, between the side of the circle and the side of the rectangle, if that was smaller than a 1/2 inch, it would leave that uncut.